Welcome to the High Adventure Scouting Podcast. This is the source for all things high adventure for scouts, scouters, and anyone else interested in promoting high adventure trips for our youth. You can find all kinds of great high adventure options for your scouts at highadventurescouting.com. We are constantly updating the list of cool trips, and we want your input on your best trip. Welcome, high adventure enthusiasts. We're excited, as always, to highlight high adventure on this edition of the High Adventure Scouting Podcast. Today, we're going to be discussing independent trips to the Boundary Waters. Now, we are joined by one of my favorite scouters, Jon Jonas. Jon is the chair of the High Adventure Committee for the Greater St. Louis Area Council. He's also Assistant Scoutmaster in charge of High Adventure for Troop 94 in O'Fallon, Illinois, a Wilderness First Aid Instructor, and much, much more that we don't have time to mention, but he does a lot. He's also a great friend of mine, and he's been a mentor for our high adventure trips that we've done in our troop. And I've also brought him in to teach some of our scouts in my troop about backpacking. He's kind of my go-to guy for high adventure, and I've been trying for a year to get him on this podcast, and we finally did it. So, Jon, thanks for joining us today on the High Adventure Scouting Podcast.
Well, thank you for having me, Rob. I really appreciate it, and apologize for the delay in getting it. Just time keeps getting away, and life happens. You know how that goes. But thank you again. I'm really honored to be here, and those kind words. Thank you.
Exactly. Well, the purpose of this particular podcast is to give listeners some information really about a do-it-yourself Boundary Waters trip. Now, there are plenty of units around the country going to the Boundary Waters in Minnesota, and I believe this will be a popular episode. Jon has been to the Boundary Waters many times with this troop, and I think he brings a great perspective. And before we jump into things, this is not an episode discussing the BSA High Adventure Base, Northern Tier Canoe Base. That'll be covered in another episode. And Northern Tier has a base on Moose Lake in the Boundary Waters, and that's also a great experience. I've done that option, but not an independent trip, which is what we'll be discussing today with Jon. Now, Jon, I know there's a few ways to do this. Now, we've talked about this several times, on your own and with an outfitter. I know what you've done, but what is your preference, and what is your impression that people have done something different than you have?
All of my Boundary Waters trips, Rob, have been with an outfitter. My very first trip in 1993, someone else in the troop set it up. We went to Tuscarora Outfitter off the Gunflint Trail, which is on the east side of the Boundary Waters. And I was very impressed with how professional they were, the planning, the care, the materials, the equipment, the food, the whole thing. So for my next trip, I just defaulted to go back again. Before I get into that, a lot of that, there's one thing that I do want to kind of bring up to kick off, whether you're going to do it yourself or go to Northern Tier. A lot of people don't know BSA has a very well kept secret approach to preparing for any adventure. And it's essential if you're going to start to plan a high adventure. It's called the Adventure Plan, and it's at tap.scouting.org. It's almost a cookbook of what to do to get ready for one of these trips. And if you are not going to a BSA high adventure base, it's even more incumbent on you to go through this. It will address everything that you need to cover or at least consider. It's a one-stop set of tools to help adults and youth leaders plan, prepare, assemble, conduct your high adventure. If you start with step one and continue on, you will cover everything that you need to cover, rather than trying to brainstorm and think up that I remember to do this and that. And, you don't know what you don't know. So I've been doing this for high adventure trips in my troop since 1993. And when this became available, I think it was 5 or 10 years ago, and I literally stumbled across it. I didn't know it was out there till I happened to look for something else, and there it was. I looked at it, I thought, this is the way to go. And so I use this tool with all my experience doing high adventure. I still use this tool just to make sure I don't forget something. If I go through, not every step is going to be directly applicable or relevant, but at least I've considered it, and I don't omit something because either I forgot about it or I didn't know to do it. So let's start with tap.scouting.org. the adventure plan, and then go from there. So
And that's a link I definitely have on the website because it's a really good resource.
good,
So yeah,
good.
yeah.
So if you're going up to the Boundary Waters, I'm going to assume that you know about it. It encompasses a huge chunk of northern Minnesota and southern Canada. It's an internationally recognized wilderness area and managed collaboratively, United States and Canada, and they do a pretty good job of it. Uh, if you have never been up there before, or even if you have been up there before, and if you're not going to go to Northern Tier, the BSA site, but you're going to do this on your own, either self outfit or through an outfitter, there's a good website to start with is bwcaw.com for Boundary Waters Canoe Area Wilderness.com. Uh, it's kind of a, I don't know, a launching point, you might say, for information, conditions. There are outfitters that support it, so you can find more information about different outfitters, other resources, things to consider, links to YouTube videos. A great place to start. If you just do a web search on Boundary Waters Canoe Area Wilderness, you probably get 3,752 hits in, like the first 2 nanoseconds, which is pretty, can be a little overwhelming. So I would start with bwcaw.com and then go from there. There's also a zillion great books out there. Robert Beimer wrote a couple books on routes, one for the east boundary waters, another for the west. There are some other books about canoeing. There's books about the history. Cliff Jacobson is a guy who's written a bunch of books on wilderness canoeing. Um, there's a magazine called Boundary Waters Journal, and there is a website for that as well. Uh, I've been subscribing to that since I don't know, sometime in the late '90s when I first heard about the magazine. It comes out 4 times a year, and I read it pretty much cover to cover, even articles about fishing. I don't fish, but the articles are interesting, and a lot of wisdom, a lot of I've been there, a lot of history, a lot of what to do, what not to do. So those are some things that to consider when you get started. You'll want to get an early start if you're going to go. You will, the Boundary Waters requires entry permits. If you're going in for a day, you're going to go in, paddle around for the day, and come back out that night. You can self permit at entry points. They have stations you can take care of that. If you're going in overnight, whether it's one night or many nights, you have to go through the Forest Service. And actually, the website is I think it's recreation.gov is the website to get your permit. If you're going to self outfit and take your own canoes and your own gear and your own food, then you've got to get your own permit and do all that. You're on your own. If you're going through an outfitter, they'll take care of that for you. And the cost of the permit, at least at Tuscarora, is built into your fee. So there's not like a separate charge. When you start building your budget sheet, you can get a quote from them on how many people and what kind of or you want full outfitting, you want partial outfitting, you're going to take some of your own gear, you're going to use all of theirs, however you're going to do that, how many days are you going to be up there, and they'll send you a quote that you can get started with. And that permit fee is at least at Tuscarora. They used to, a long time ago, they used to have it as a breakout line item. Now it's just embedded in your fee, so it makes it a little bit simpler, a little easier.
Mhm.
Um,
Awesome.
So I know we're not going to talk about Northern Tier. If you just a little quick note, if you've never been to Boundary Waters before and you're not an experienced wilderness traveler, your best bet might be to go ahead and do the Northern Tier thing. They will furnish you with a guide, the expertise, everything that you're going to need for your trek. If you've done wilderness paddling, whether it's in the Boundary Waters or somewhere else, if you've done wilderness travel, backpacking, and you're something like that, and you're an accomplished canoeer or kayaker, you might be fine going through an outfitter. One of the drivers in where you go is crew size. In the Boundary Waters, we're limited to a total of 9 people in a crew. So if you go through the BSA Northern Tier Base, you can take no more than 8 people from your unit per crew. If you have more than that, you have to get 2 crews, and they do have a minimum crew size at Northern Tier. If you're going to an outfitter, you have 9 people that want to go, then you can put them all in one crew. Some of the outfitters can provide you with a guide if you want to hire one. Most of them don't. Most of them assume that everyone in the crew or someone in the crew pretty much knows what they're doing, and you're pretty much going to be on your own once they launch you. Uh, so, there's a risk management issue in there as you're looking at this. The first time I went up there, again in 1993, the guy that set it up said, "Hey, let's go canoeing in Minnesota." And I thought, yeah, okay, that sounds like fun. Well, we didn't do any training. We didn't really do any planning to speak of. And we got up there and, okay, here's your canoes, here's your gear, here's how you pack, here's how you load, here's what's in which pack. A good walkthrough of all that. Remember, leave no trace. Here are the principles. And off we went. And we were out on the water about an hour, and I realized, wow, this is not what I thought. There's a lot of bad things that could happen up here, and I don't know that we're ready. Fortunately, bad things rarely happen, so we were okay. I've had a very steep learning curve up in the Boundary Waters. Every time I go, I still learn something. Um, I like kind of being on my own. Yes, I follow Guide to Safe Scouting and scouting, paddle the safety afloat and safe swim defense. Follow all of that stuff, but I feel very comfortable having the crew and running it myself. Right.
Now we're talking about the outfitter. What kinds of things does the outfitter provide? I mean, that's something that always interesting to me. Is all right. What's included? So
So at Tuscarora, and I would imagine the other outfitters or follow along the same lines. Tuscarora has a couple different kinds of package. You can go complete outfitting, where they will do all of your crew gear, and I'll run through that in a minute. Or they've got well, you can do a la carte that can get pricey, or they've got like partial outfitting packages. So if all you want to get from them is canoes and paddles, okay, you can do that and you've got everything else. If you've got your own canoes and you want them to provide tents and food, for example, they've got a price package for that. So they've got Tuscarora has some breakouts. I always go with complete outfitting. Just it's easier than trying to carry our own stuff up there and prepare our own food and all that. And I think the price is reasonable. So the outfitter at Tuscarora, they provide start with canoes, obviously. Pretty much everybody up there is getting away from the aluminum canoes, which are 65, 70 pounds, and they're going to the Kevlar canoes, which are I think 45 to 50 pounds, depending if they're how big they are, two person or three person.
if that, they're pretty light. So
They are, yeah, I think 40, 45 pounds. They'll provide you with the paddles. They're relatively inexpensive aluminum paddles with the plastic handles, plastic T grip, and the plastic blades, kind of like what they use at the scout camps. Each of the canoes has a built-in carrying yoke and pads, which some are still pretty good, and some of them get a little smashed down, a little hard after a while. Um, they provide the Coast Guard approved Type 3 flotation vests, which are required, and BSA requires, and so do I. We're ready to load the canoes in the morning before we start hauling stuff down to put in the canoes. Everyone puts their float coat on, and those float coats don't come off until we're in camp out of the canoes at the end of the day. So yeah, they are not seat cushions. They're to wear. So anyway, the outfitter provides those um, tents, a couple different versions of tents that they can do that are good tents. A dining fly, sleeping pads. They do offer sleeping bags if you want. If you don't want to use their sleeping bags, you want to bring your own. Even with a complete outfitting, they'll cut everyone a couple dollar break on that. And I pretty much encourage everyone to bring their own sleeping pad bags. Tuscarora sleeping bags are a little big and bulky. They're the rectangle bags. They're not the mummy bags. They are synthetic bags, and they're good bags, but I prefer to use our own. They'll provide the cooking and eating kits and utensils, a dining fly, a folding saw, um, rope for whatever you need, including rigging your dining fly. Um, the food, we get to pick our own menu. All the cleanup items, the kitchen cleaning items, camp stoves. and canoe packs for personal community crew gear and the food. And one of the best things that the outfitter provides is they do all the cleanup at the end of the trip. Most BSA places I've been, when you come off the out of the field, you get to hang up the tents, you get to clean them out, you get to scrub the pots shiny, you get to do all of that, put everything away. At Tuscarora, you come in, you can't bring in scuzzy, beat up, grungy pots that have never
Mhm.
been washed the whole week. I mean, they need to be reasonably clean, but they don't expect everything spotless. You bring everything in. If the tents are wet, it doesn't matter. You hand it all to them. They take care of it. And you get to go take a hot shower and go into your bunkhouse. So that's another nice thing about going to an outfitter.
Now, when you start this kind of process in your troop, what do you go about as far as hey, starting the process and getting people involved to the training, and what kind of training do you go through for a trip like this?
Well, I'm going to go back to the tap. I
Mhm.
think it's step 20 something. Let's see. Oh, 29, 30, and 31. That covers training, physical conditioning, and skills practice. So I require all of the scouts to have 4 merit badges before we go. They need to have camping, first aid, swimming, and canoeing merit badges. I recognize that doesn't mean they're going to be particularly proficient in any of those, because that's what happens at summer camp. They show the skills good enough to get the badge, okay. But I don't want someone up there that doesn't know how to camp, has never, is just learning how to pitch a tent, set up a campsite. I don't want someone up there that doesn't know anything about first aid. Certainly, swimming is an absolute, that's a go, no go item. They've got to be able to swim, and we all do swim checks before we go. And then canoeing merit badges, I want them to have some familiarity with paddling a canoe. Are they going to be expert? No. Are they going to be proficient? Maybe, but they've done it before and they understand when you put the paddle in the water which way to push to get the canoe to go forward or one side or the other. Um, then we have personal fitness, physical fitness. Um, I get everybody working for canoeing. You really need a full body workout, a full body strength. It requires upper body core. Your core strength is the most important thing. You need leg strength for the portages because you're going to be carrying those canoes from one lake to another, and the portages go up hills, down hills, between trees, around trees. You're going to make tight turns. You're going to be walking through, around, over rocks and roots, and you got to be physically ready to do all this stuff. You can't just wait for the big guys to handle all of this. Everybody needs to carry their share. The packs are, packs the first couple of days might be 40, 50 pounds. And the canoes, as we talked about, they're in that same range. And trying to manage a 40, even a 40-pound canoe, you think, oh, 40 pounds, that's not too bad. Except you're right in the middle, and this canoe is 17 feet long. So, public math here, what is that? 8.5 feet of canoe in front of me and 8.5 behind me. And that's a pretty long moment arm if you're thinking basic physics stuff. They're not that easy to handle. So there's the physical stuff. Push-ups, planks, side planks, V-sits, lunges, weighted lunges. If you do yoga, the boat pose is really good for core. Um, so anyway, there's a whole bunch of things. Yes, you need the cardio. You need all of that for the physical training. Um, the skills practice is something that we do. I book a day. I've been trying to figure out how to do a real canoe camping weekend, and timing wise, I haven't been able to get that to work yet. So, at any rate, everybody does get out on a lake on one of our scout camps with canoes, and we spend a day out there. We do the swim check, make sure everyone is BSA swimmer. I know they've all got swimming merit badge, but everyone's got to take that swim check every year. So we do the swim check, and then we get in the canoes and we go out, we paddle, and we work on basic paddling strokes. I try to put youth with youth. I don't want the youth to depend on the adults. And this is not just on practice day, but actually up in the boundary waters on our trip. I don't want the youth need to learn how to do this. And so try to pair youth with youth and adults with adults. We may have to end up with some youth in the bow and some adults in the stern. If it's the wind's pushing them around, they're not quite ready for it. But let's start youth with youth. So we pretty much do the canoeing merit badge skills, redo that, the paddling, the maneuvering, the capsize the canoe, the right the canoe, the enter and exit the canoe, um, doing all of that stuff. How much of that are we ever going to have to do in the boundary waters? I've never had a canoe capsize. A couple times did have a canoe with the adults in it that they were having a hard time on a really windy high wave day. They kept getting sideways to the waves and they did swamp. Um, they're full of gear. No, we're not going to do canoe over canoe rescues in the boundary waters, but it's part of familiarity and comfort in and around canoes. So we spend a day doing all of that. And if we have a chance, if you can go somewhere and rehearse canoe camping and portaging, that's great. If not, then that's really going to be a learning event your first couple of days on the trek, which means when I get
Right.
up there, I have to remind myself, very first portage, okay, we've paddled 10 minutes and now it's time for a portage. Okay, boys, here's how this works. And first you do this, and you just walk them through. And it's going to take them a while to get into the rhythm of that. Some crews, they pick it up that first day. Some crews, it might take 2 or 3 days before they really get into the swing of it. But eventually they get it and off you go.
What kind of cost, average cost per person, would a trip like this cost in a typical troop? A trip you would take with basically the complete package and that kind of thing, with travel and so on. I mean, we're coming from the St. Louis area. We live pretty close together, so I know what our costs are, and that travel will be different for everybody. But I'm kind of curious about the package cost and what you guys usually look at.
Uh, our This past summer, we had a crew of 9 at Tuscarora. The Tuscarora fee itself came in at something a little under $600 per person for a 7-day trip.
Mhm.
So that was 7 days, 6 nights on the water, complete outfitting. They did all the food, all the everything that I had read off down there. That also included 2 nights in the bunkhouse. So with their package, your first night in the bunkhouse is included. If you want to stay there the night you come off the water, there's an additional fee to it for it. It's not that much. Um, for me, it just makes things easier than coming off the water at 3 o'clock in the afternoon and then having to pack up and go somewhere and find somewhere else to stay. And it's a whole lot more economical than staying in a motel. So yeah, so it was came in a little less than $600 a person. Uh, from St. Louis area, it's 2 days of travel, guided safe scouting, 10-hour a day driving limit, and you've also got to include in your budget your food en route. If you're going to see any other attractions en route, there is gear that people are going to have to acquire. Um, TAP Step 12 talks about creating a budget worksheet, and again, make sure that you've got all these things built in and covered.
Exactly, and I've got that up on my screen right now as we're talking, and it's one of the best things for any leader that's looking at a trip like, and especially an independent trip that you don't have a lot of guidance on. This is one of the best areas to go by, the adventure plan. So,
Yeah.
and I'm going to have those links out on this particular podcast just so everybody can follow along. So, we all know the major high adventure bases around the country, and they offer some awesome programs. Have you been searching for a cool alternative from your typical high adventure trip? As a scout leader, I want to give our scouts some great alternatives. You need to check out highadventurescouting.com. You'll find information on over 30 different council high adventure bases in 24 states. Maybe you're looking for a do-it-yourself option and need some ideas. Maybe you've taken a great trip and you want to share your good fortune with your fellow scouts and scouters. Just send us the details and we'll publish your trip. Whatever your interest, highadventurescouting.com is the one-stop shop for all things high adventure. That's highadventurescouting.com. Now, how long does it usually take for you to get a trip like this together? From, hey, we're going to go, to making the reservations and going. Is this, I know when we're talking about the the big BSA, trips, Um, I've talked about every podcast about how long it took us to get to Philmont, and because of all the delays and so on. But what's the gestation period of from start to finish for you guys?
Well, I start all of my high adventure trip planning about a year before. So, like right now, we're planning for next summer. Um, Philmont's a little bit different because of their lottery system, and I'm not familiar with
Right.
Northern Tier's lottery. But if you're going through an outfitter, normally you could call them like 2 weeks ahead of time and get some kind of an entry point with some kind of gear. The last couple of years, things have been different, and if we tried to do that this year, they would have said, "Boy, I'd love to, but we're full. Sorry, we can't accommodate you." So anyway, I start in August, September, a year before. Um, Explain what we're doing, what we want to do, where we're going to go, as far as what part of the boundary waters we're going to try to get to. Um, Lay all this information out for the boys to get them excited, for the parents, so that they can start budgeting. I like to get this information out in the fall because, my feeling, at this stage of kids' lives, when they're in their, when they're teenagers, sometimes finding something for them for Christmas, it's not the same as buying toys like, for 8, 9, and 10-year olds. So what are you going to
Mhm.
get a teenager? Well, there's some equipment they're going to need for whether it's Philmont or Boundary Waters or whatever they're doing for high adventure. That sounds like pretty good Christmas present kind of stuff, for mom and dad and grandma and grandpa and whoever else. So we get started with that. Costs, I'll lay out a budget and I'll give everyone an estimated cost so that people who are budgeted, and a lot of people are, they can decide, is this going to be doable? And if so, how am I going to get there? For some people who are more fortunate, yeah, okay, if I need to write a check for $1,000, sure, not a problem. It's good for my son, and off we go. In January, um, the Forest Service starts, and I think it's the Forest Service, they have a lottery for entry points. Every entry point in the boundary waters has allots so many entries per day. The one I like to go to, my favorite one, is right next to the Tuscarora Outfitter. Usually mid-January, they take all of the entry permit requests and they do some kind of a random lottery and start pulling them out of a hat, or well, they used to. Now it's pulling them out of a computer. So if you want to get into a lake that's got a very limited number of entry permits, you need to get that information in early, like December, November, December.
Mhm.
Usually the outfitters will say, "Yeah, let me know in December, early January," and they'll throw it in. If you're going into some of the big lakes up there, like Seagull Lake or Saganaga Lake, those are the two big ones over on the east side. Those have like 50 entry permits a day. So usually it's no problem getting an entry permit. However, um, those also, you might have a hard time finding a decent campsite because a lot of people get there and you don't have to paddle very far to get to a campsite. And a lot of people don't want a portage. That's hard to do. Uh, and I understand that. Portages are not the most fun thing for me, but they get you more remote. They get you out where you can get to some places where you may not see anybody else. This last summer, we got to, I think it was our second day. I think it was our second day. We got to Little Saganaga Lake. We did not see anybody else on that. We were on that lake for 2 days, and the end of the second day that we were there, we did come across some other people. But the first day we were there, we didn't see anyone. So, Portage, you get a little more remote, and that's why a lot of people go up there, get away from everybody and
Mhm.
get that wilderness feel.
And there's no cell towers up there, so you're not distracted by cell phone or anything else. You're up there to kind of relax, and that's the thing I really liked about it is it got you away from everything.
Yes.
You weren't near anybody, and like you said, there are some places that you may not see anybody for a day, which is great. I have no problem with
Yep.
that.
Yep.
Now, as far as in the troop, uh, or any unit, but for your troop, what's the determining factor for those going on the trip? Because We know the major BSA high adventure bases. There's a certain age restriction and sometimes physical strength and so on. But with going through an outfitter, you don't have some of those restrictions. What are your personal guidelines for youth and adults, for that matter, wanting to go on a Boundary Waters trip with you guys?
I'm pretty risk averse, Rob, especially when
Mhm.
we're going up into somewhere that if something happens, we've got to pretty much handle it ourselves. So BSA came up with the age and fitness guidelines for youth and adults, and the height and weight, and I mean all of that kind of stuff. They got there for a reason, and so I pretty much follow that. If
Okay.
Yeah, and you think the minimum age for I think Northern Tier and Philmont, it's 13, it's 14 or 13 and completed eighth grade. There's a couple
Exactly.
reasons for that. That this can be stressful, mentally, physically, emotionally stressful. And if you start putting a lot of 11 and 12-year-olds up there who barely know how to camp, uh, that's not the place for them to learn how to camp. That being said,
Exactly.
there are a lot of families that, mom and dad have been traveling the Boundary Waters, and they'll take their kids up there when they're 5 and 6 and 7 years old. Well, good for them. But they've only got one or two or three kids. They're not going up there with three adults and six youth. So I follow BSA guidelines on all of that. And I did have to tell an adult about 15, 16 years ago that he wasn't going to come with me. I looked at his son was in the crew. He wanted to go as one of the adult leaders. I looked at his health form, and I did not feel that I could accept the risk of if he had problems. And I told him, I said, if something goes wrong, I don't know what to do. I can't handle it. And he said, well, nothing's going to go wrong. And I pointed to a couple things and said, hey, this is in your health form. This is for you. Do you want to die in front of your son? And I put it
Yeah.
right in those terms. And he didn't like it, but he accepted it. And his son went and had a great
Yeah.
time. And this guy just was not physically ready for the kind of trip we were going to take. That being said, if we were going to go up there into one of the lakes and go like maybe two portages in and base camp, which is something you can do, you don't have to pick up and travel all the time. If you want to make it a vacation, you're going to travel in, portage in like two lakes deep, set up a base camp and just do day trips all the time. Well, that's a different story. There, you're pretty close to getting out, and it's not that strenuous. So,
You want not real strenuous. Go down to sea base as an adult. That's that is no stress whatsoever. So I can attest to that. That's a great trip. So, um, any other cool, interesting facts that I haven't covered that wasn't on my question sheet? What did I
uh,
miss?
geez, I could spend the next 3 or 4 hours talking about all of this. A
Oh,
couple
you,
of there,
you and I can stand and sit and talk for hours. I know, and
yeah, there,
and we did for a half an hour before we started. So,
Yeah, yeah. There's a couple of training things that I neglected. I want to bring those up. I do review Leave No Trace. We do teach navigation. Overwater navigation is a little different from trail. In fact, it's a lot different from trail navigation. So I break out some old Boundary Waters charts and get everybody around on a table with a compass, and show them how do you lay out a course. Um, everyone needs to have a compass, and it needs to be a base plate compass because you're going to be using it to put marks on charts. Um, all the adults in my crews need to be safe swim defense and safety afloat trained, which you can do online. I go over all of those points, the 8 safe swim defense and 9 safety afloat, with all of the boys. They don't memorize them, but we go through it and I explain why are we doing things this way and what's important. A note on that: safe swim defense and safety afloat are required for these kinds of events. They outline the policies of conducting safe swimming activities and safe boating activities. They do not address skills proficiency. So there is other training that we have recently restarted in the council. In fact, we had some a couple of weeks ago. There's an aquatic supervision paddlecraft safety canoe course and aquatic supervision swimming and water rescue course. The Council Aquatics Committee ran that a couple of weeks ago. I know they're looking to start making that a regular thing. That is where the leaders get the training. We can go up there in the boundary waters, and if nobody knows how to do swimming and water rescue, then all of this beautiful water to go swimming in, and we're hanging out we're hanging out big time risk wise if we let everybody go swimming. So you need to be trained in that. If you have a lifeguard in your crew, great, then that covers that. Same thing with the paddlecraft safety. I've been up there with adults that had been in a canoe a couple of times when they were teenagers, and that was the extent of their paddling skills. Again, this is back on my 1993, the first trip I went on. It's like, okay, we're never going to do that again. That being said, the paddlecraft safety really is a good skills course. It's kind of a canoeing merit badge light. It's the skills part taught by um, aquatics instructors. It's a BSA course, so I would definitely recommend that leaders of these crews get to those things: the paddlecraft safety canoe and the swimming and water rescue. So if you are going to go swimming and you do have a problem, you know how to get in the water and get someone out of the water, or better yet, not get in the water because that's your last choice, but you know how to get them out of trouble. Other things on the water, I have a nav chat each evening with the next day's navigator. We change that over every day. It's one of the duty rosters. Get out the chart, get a nav board and a compass, set the destination for that next day, lay out the courses, and I teach them how to shoot bearings, how do you get around islands and peninsulas, wherever we're going to go. So map and compass skills can be a little spotty. Some pick it up right away. Some it takes a longer time, but everybody learns it by the end of the week. I do the same thing with crew leadership that we do at Philmont, Northern Tier, and the other places. Crew selects their own ELECs, excuse me, their own crew leaders. Uh, they determine who's going to be chaplain's aide, the wilderness guide. I also have a quartermaster to try to manage gear. That can be a little bit of a challenge sometimes. And I keep working throughout the week that we're up there, and I go for week-long trips to get everybody into the stern of the canoe and become mostly proficient and ready to take charge. This past trip, I'll just tell one quick story if we have time. There
Mhm.
was a young man who was not a very proficient canoer. He kind of wanted to go. He was a little afraid of going because he didn't think he'd be able to do it. I had to coax him, and his dad went along, and that was a good thing. Um, I had to coax him along and tell him, if I didn't think you could do it, I would not have put you on the list of people to go. I would have said, yeah, not this year. Let's try another year. But you can
Mhm.
do this. It's all in your head. You just have to decide, yes, I can do this. So, so we're up there and off we go. Um, he didn't have a lot of confidence in his skills, and there was a reason for that. His skills were limited. Over the course of the week, they got better and better. And the last day, that we were paddling out. We had a pretty long paddle, and we had a handful of portages to get out through a bunch of little lakes. And he had been paddling with his dad most of the trip. Um, I talked to his dad and I said, I want to take him in my canoe tomorrow. His dad said, good idea. You should do that. And so the night before our last night, said, okay, canoe lineups. And normally the crew leader would set this up. And I asked him, I said, okay, when you're doing crew lineups, put Josh in my canoe tomorrow. And the crew leader said, okay. And Josh sat up in a hurry and looked at me and looked at his dad. His eyes are big. It's like, wait a minute, what happened? So he didn't say anything. So the next day, I asked him, do you want the bow or the stern? He said, oh, I want the bow. Okay. So off we go. And we paddle and we come across the first portage and we get to the other side of the portage. We got the other side. I put my paddle and my day pack in the front. And he came up behind me and he looked at the canoe and he didn't know what to say. And he's kind of standing there. I said, yeah, you get in the stern, you take the stern on. So he was the stern paddler the rest of the day. So if you're a canoeist, if you're a paddler, you know the stern is the captain of the ship. They're the one in charge.
Mhm.
So we got in the canoe, and I said, okay, you tell me what you want me to do, and I'll do what you tell me. And, you know, if there's questions, just ask. So he didn't say much. We kind of paddling, and a couple of times I said, would you like me to do this? Yeah, that's a good idea. Okay. Another time, would you like me to do that? Yeah, that's a good idea. So he got more and more comfortable, and I just started talking to him about stuff. He's a big Harry Potter fan. We talked about Harry Potter books. We talked about the trees we're looking at. I mean, just I think he was a little scared of me. I think, um, and you know, just we're just chewing the fat on all kinds of stuff while we're paddling and portaging. Well, halfway across the last lake, as we're paddling up to the outfitter's place, the wind picked up on the bow. And I'm paddling along with a steady stroke, and he's doing a really good job of keeping our bow pointed where we're trying to go. I mean, he finally figured all this out. We're about halfway across this lake, and he says, Mr. Jonas, we got a headwind. You're going to have to paddle harder. Aye, aye, sir. You know, it's like, okay, I got it. You know, so it took a while, but by the end of the week, he was ready to go. So, you know, that's what we're trying to do by taking them up to the Boundary Waters or any of these high adventures. We want them to be able to do this.
Exactly. That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, I will tell you the outfitter that John and his troop uses, Tuscarora Lodge and Canoe Outfitters. They're in Minnesota. I do have information about them on the High Adventure Scouting website. If there are any other outfitters that are scout friendly that troops use or units use, let me know. I'll list them on the site so everybody can have access. And those are things we want to know. So,
I
well,
know,
John, I
yeah, Rob.
go
I
ahead.
know a lot of the outfielders up there are very scout friendly, and I have come across
Mhm.
scout units, you know, cross paths with them, and every outfitter has got their corporate logo or their outfitter logo on their canoes. And I've seen scout units from any number of outfitters. They really they get a lot of youth groups, scout groups, YMCA groups, church groups, school groups. They most of the outfitters up there are really geared up for that, and they get a lot of business, and they like having that business. So shouldn't be too hard to find others. Tuscarora is
Yeah.
great, but I haven't tried any of the others. I keep going back to what I know.
Well, that's what we all do. So,
Yeah.
well, John, I want to thank you for joining us today and talking about Boundary Waters and giving really an overview of what an independent trip up there looks like. And I appreciate for the time.
Thank you again for having me on. I really appreciate it. I'm really honored to be here, Rob. If anybody wants to uh, get hold of me with any questions or anything, Rob, could I ask them to kind of filter through you to get hold of me?
Yep, yep, I sure will.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You can
And
you
if
can
if
send an
you
email,
yeah, email would be
through
best.
yeah.
Yeah, that'd be the best thing.
So info at highadventurescouting.com. It's pretty easy. So I want to thank Jon Jonas for joining us today. Awesome information. And if you can get some more information about the outfitter he uses at highadventurescouting.com. And if you'd like to have kind of connect with John, shoot me an email at info at highadventurescouting.com. Thanks for joining us today. And remember to tell your friends about this podcast. You can find us online at highadventurescouting.com, on Facebook or Instagram. If you have any questions or ideas for future podcasts, just email us at info at highadventurescouting.com. This podcast and website are independent and not affiliated with any youth organization. Happy High Adventure! This has been a production of High Adventure Resources.